Ladies and gentlemen, our third and final plenary presentation this morning is from Julie Marlowe from the SEC. If you haven't read her bio, I encourage you to do so in the app, as usual. We are really looking forward to hearing from the SEC again after a little break of a few years as a result of COVID and other things. But welcome to Data Amplified, Julie. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to your presentation.
Okay, test. Can you guys hear me? Yeah. Great. So let me put this down. All right. Good morning, everyone. Great to be back in Zurich. Our family was here in April for kids' spring break. And in addition to participating in this important event, I have another important task to execute, which is to bring back Swiss chocolate per our kids' request. Okay. As with any SEC presentation, let me start with the disclaimer. Present today is provided in my official capacity as the Commission's Assistant Director of the Office of Structured Disclosure, but does not reflect the views of the Commission, Commissioners, or other members of the staff. When John and I met to discuss what topics I should cover, we joked about how I should start also the presentation with, I'm unable to talk about any proposing releases, including the climate rule. Here are some topics that I'd like to cover with you today. Greatly appreciate this opportunity, mainly on the SEC Structured Data Program and some of the rules that we have issued in the past year or so, Financial Data Transparency Act, and some of the tools that we have developed for our Commission staff's use, among other topics. Let's start with what our office does, Office of Structured Disclosure. So we're part of a division called Division and Economic Risk Analysis. So our division mainly has economists who work on rulemaking, specifically on the economic analysis. We also have data scientists and others that work on data analysis and risk analysis. Our office has attorneys who work on rulemaking if the rule has a structured data requirement. We also have accountants who review filings for data quality. We engage with FASB and ISB on their respective taxonomies. And we do market engagement, as I'm doing right now. We meet with investors, data aggregators, and listen to their observations on data quality and our taxonomies. We also design applications for our staff's use, and I'll cover that in a later slide. And we publish data sets for free, public to use on our website. Right now, we have over 12 data sets, including the financial statement data sets that I'll cover later. So let's do a little structured data history. We started in 2005. Enabling the filers to give us XBRL data for operating companies, financial statements, and notes voluntarily. Then in 2009, we adopted interactive data rules that require operating companies to give us machine-readable XBRL data, financial statements, and notes, and later on, mutual fund. 2017, the long-awaited IFRS taxonomy was approved, and we began receiving foreign private issuers' structured financial statements and notes. 2018 was a big year for us. Inline XBRL was adopted. And I'm sure you've heard XBRL before, but if this is your first day, XBRL stands for Extensible Business Reporting Language. You can think of it as a language that the machines use to read and process the data. And inline XBRL is a little different than the traditional XBRL in that it combines the presentation view of HTML filing, and it has the metadata when you hover over the tag data. So metadata that you may not see in the HTML, such as accounting codifications, requirements related to that data. Then, since then, as John mentioned earlier, we've had numerous rules with structured data requirements. And with all the structured data we have now, we're available to make it available through RSS feeds, published data sets, and our Edgar business office that's in charge of the Edgar system also provide XBRL data through API. EDGAR stands for Electronic Data Gathering Analysis Retrieval System. And you can think of that as a central depository system the filers use to submit data to us. The last point, EDGAR submission does include some validation checks that I'll cover later. Financial Data Transparency Act. This was signed into law in December of last year and has several directives for certain financial regulatory agencies, including the SEC. Among the few, we have to adopt data standards for reports filed under Securities Act, Securities Exchange Act, and the Investment Company Act. We also have to come up with a legal entity identifier that enables openness and machine readability of public data. And we have to establish a data quality improvement program. And finally, we have to report to Congress every 180 days from the enactment of the act for the next 7 years on the use of machine readable data by us, but also the public. So we have our work cut out for us. The first report was issued in June of this year, and it has many topics. And here are a few examples of how our commission staff use the data. And as John mentioned earlier, this is a question we get often. Does SEC staff use structured data? Absolutely. Is there anyone else who uses structured data? Absolutely. So let's find out. Starting with the corporation and finance staff. In case you're unaware what they do, they oversee operating companies like Amazon. They review periodic filings. And they have the ability to contact the filers through comment letters, dear issuer letters, or calls. And they use structured data to identify users that are subject to certain disclosure reporting requirements. For example, Holding Foreign Companies Accountable Act. And in case you're unaware of what that is, that act requires filers to structure their auditor information, the PCAOB number, location of the audit where the audit report was issued. Both CorFin and our division staff have used structured data that appear on the cover pages of periodic filings. And we use that data to identify, count, sort, compare, analyze data, figure out which exchanges are they registered, among other data topics. Investment management staff. That group oversees investment advisors and investment companies. And they have used structured data to detect errors, inconsistencies within filings, and identify funds with particular characteristics or disclosures, as well as funds with certain holdings, risk parameters, or exposures. Finally, the Office of Chief Accountant. So that group oversees PCAOB, and also they conduct accounting consultations with filers. They have used output of certain analytical applications we have to conduct research for accounting consultations, respond to data requests, and particular registrant compliance as well. The report is public, and it has other use cases by commission staff, so please check it out. In addition to SEC staff, there are many users who use structured data. Let's start with the top, academics. We have a public-facing inbox where the public can send us questions about structured data, filers, aggregators, tagging vendors, questions on tagging requirements. And academics, they use our XBRL data, the financial statement notes, or other data sets on our website for their research, and we often get questions from them. FASB, they have used structured data for accounting consultations and new accounting standards, such as lease accounting. Moving on to the right side, analysts. In April of every year, FASB hosts a webinar to discuss updates on their taxonomies, and also we participate to discuss data quality and EDGAR updates. And one year, they had a representative from a financial firm that discussed how they use XBRL data for their investment analysis. We're also aware of another financial firm that have used structured data for Tax Cuts Jobs Act analysis. And in addition to SEC, we have other federal agencies such as FDIC that use structured data. One of the tools we have developed is called Financial Statement Core Reviewer. This has all structured financial statements and notes data for operating companies. And the staff can search and review filings across all facts and all filers. And potential staff use cases include searching the data using various filters, such as industry, filer status, location, search by fact, specific disclosure type, or tag name, searching by text, keyword search in a narrative disclosure. And because footnotes are structured, we're able to compare to a red line for a specific filer among periods. So it's easy to see what the filer said in one period and how that changed in the next period. And we're able to save all these results locally and share with other colleagues who may be doing the same research. Example text search using FSQV could be researching filings that mention environmental, social, and governance. And taking the data, further dissecting into where in the filing is ESG most mentioned. Again, FSQV allows us to group results by sector, filer size, and other categories. Another application called Filer Profile. You can think of this kind of a dashboard. It provides instant access to certain key data points, whether it be financial data, auditor-related information, or others, covering operating companies. It highlights potentially high-risk data points and facilitates further review by providing a link to the data source for each data point. It enables staff to quickly identify specific areas and topics of interest before they dig into their large filings. In addition to working on analytical applications, our staff also issue observations and guidance for filers, tagging vendors, and others. For example, data quality reminder. These are short posts about a particular data topic that we looked into in a year, including scaling errors. We've seen filers with public float errors. A non-XLA filer that has 3 extra zeros in XBRL, that has a public float of trillion, which is clearly wrong. We also seen filers use incorrect tags. So, for example, using a liability tag for revenue disclosure, or using an old tag, even though they adopted a new accounting standards that come with new tags. You might also be aware of Division of Corporation Finance that has issued comment letters on certain XBRL topics, such as missing XBRL, when the filers don't give us XBRL data at all, or they have not tagged all the detail amounts in the footnotes. You might also be aware that beginning of September this year, Corfin issued a sample XBRL letter with certain topics on XBRL, warning the public that they may issue certain comment letters on XBRL. And by the way, it's not an exhaustive list, so stay tuned. That is also public on our website. I mentioned earlier about EDGAR checks. There are 2 types of validation checks we do. The first is validation errors. Filers must correct these errors before they can submit the filings to us. An example would be if a filing is missing a physical year-end date. Second one is validation warnings. Filers should fix those before they submit the filings to us. An example of that would be using a deprecated tag, meaning it's an old tag that's no longer accepted in EDGAR. As John mentioned, we've been busy with numerous rules with structured data requirements. Here are just a few examples. Cybersecurity, this was adopted in July 2023, requires filers to discuss material cybersecurity incidents, but also their processes in assessing and managing those risks. It also requires the filers to discuss management's role in assessing those and board of directors' oversight of that. It does require inline XBRL, block tag for the narrative disclosures, detail tag for quantitative disclosures. Second one is share repurchase disclosure rule. This was adopted in May 2023, and it requires filers to discuss policies and procedures on repurchase of their shares by their directors and officers. Again, inline XBRL, detail tag for quantitative disclosures that may appear in tables, and they may include things such as average price per share, number of shares purchased, and block tag for qualitative disclosures. And I'm going to skip the last one. Let's go to lessons learned. So in our history, we've had many lessons along the way. And the number one lesson we learned is understanding the why. When we're talking to different stakeholders, understanding why they may be resistant or why they may be pro to structured data, and reminding them of the benefits, how they could use structured data. And start with inline XBRL, especially for those who are unfamiliar with XBRL, because it has the presentation view of HTML filing, but it combines the metadata when you hover over tag data. And reminding folks that extensions, custom tags, are difficult to consume as they lack context, or relationships. And it's important for us to enable tooling capabilities for Commission staff for easy consumption, and make the as-reported data easily and freely accessible. And lastly, data quality matters. When we see easy data quality errors that can be addressed, like scaling, we may wonder what else is wrong with the company. Is there a financial reporting process? Is there a deficiency with that? And secondly, we'll continue our engagement with different stakeholders. We meet with XBRL US periodically. We meet with FASB and ISB periodically, and ensure that folks are aware of XBRL US validation rules. They have their own validation rules that filers can include in their filings before they submit to us. And they also publish a list of filings with errors against their validation errors. Anyone can check them. And we'll continue to do user acceptance testing and publish test suites for new taxonomy updates as part of our quarterly EDGAR release, as well as making sure that we have a draft taxonomy out before the final compliance date is due, so the filers and vendors can test the taxonomies and make sure they'll work. And again, we'll continue our coordination with the FASB and ISB implementation guides and their taxonomies. I'll end my presentation with financial statements and notes data. This covers numeric and narrative disclosures going back to January of 2009. September 1 is available now on our website. And an easy way to remember our website is xbrl.sec.gov. Thank you for your time today, and I greatly appreciate your attention.
Thank you so much, Julie. I know that there are going to be some questions, but I'm going to start. I'm going to ask you the same thing that I asked Mark, which is way back when, in 2007 or 8 or something, the Commission voted on the shift towards interactive data, as it was called. And there was actually an abstention from one of the commissioners because there was no assurance obligation. We see the impact of assurance on the inline XBRL in Europe. It's early days, but we think that's already making a good difference. Is this something that the Commission will look at in due course?
John, as you may know, I am not able to speak about what the Commission may or may not do. We have certainly heard a lot of opinions and observations on that, so stay tuned.
That's the one we want, right? Stay tuned. Okay, who has a question for Julie? There's lots of SEC filers and agents in this room. Mark, you sound like you had your first on your hand.
Thank you, yes. So this winter, we spent quite some time studying US GAAP information because we were interested in trying to analyze the maturity tables for financial instruments, necessarily for financial institutions, to try to see whether we could predict their sensitivity to interest rate changes. And we noticed that a lot of these tables were composed mainly of extensions. And that must be a lot of trouble for you to study them, to make oversight of them when they are mostly extensions. So in that sort of case, how do you actually deal with the information, right? Are you actually able to do oversight on these kind of issues? And also, how do you engage with FASB to actually maybe know how it could be further standardized to actually allow oversight?
That's a great question. And one of the points that was in my presentation that I didn't cover is we actually publish custom tag analysis, one set for GAAP filers, another set for IFRS. And we're even aware of, and this is because this is public data, some vendors, tagging vendors that create more custom tags in their software compared to others. So as you mentioned, it is very difficult to consume that data. We know the filers that have higher extension rates than others, so it may take some time for us to kind of analyze that data. And that's why we remind everyone, including the filers, although the interactive data rules allow custom tags for unique disclosures, it's very important to use the standard tags, right? And we've seen filers with custom tags on common disclosures like property, plant, equipment. Everyone has PP&E, so why are you using a custom tag? It makes us wonder, are you the person who's tagging the data, did that person not know what PP&E was and there was a standard tag for that? Or are they trying to not really share the data? What's the cause of it? So it definitely makes us kind of question a little more and dig into it. And if you look at the trend, usually it's been on the downward since we started looking at the data in 2016. When we have a new accounting standard, we do see a little bit of uptick. Sometimes that's reasonable because maybe the new taxonomy wasn't ready yet for your requirement. And that's why I think FASB, ISB, we do kind of a look-back analysis after a year or two after implementation to see what does it look like now? Did the filers get used to this? Or is there a reason to add more tags based on common reporting practices? So that's where we are. Thank you very much for the question.
Who's got another question for Julie? There's one in the front. Just while the microphone's getting to you, can I just make a point for those that don't necessarily work with the SEC? At the front, please, Revati. Every day, comment letters are a bi-directional function in the SEC. So they ask for comments, and the SEC is extremely responsive, as are many other regulators, to what is written in those comment letters, much more than what you might say in the corridor. They're going to listen to you when you write a comment letter about a proposal. But equally, the SEC staff themselves write comment letters, some of which are directly to management of a company and contain hard questions. So if you're interested in the hard questions that get asked of companies, go look for comment letters. They're in EDGAR. And did you want to add anything about comment letters? You want people to write you comment letters, right?
So the one thing I would add is it's a separate division that are tasked with the policy side that they can write comment letters. Our division cannot, but we certainly meet with them to inform them of data quality errors and issues, especially on the systematic issue. And they may decide to issue comment letters. So last time I checked, there are about 12, 13 comment letters on XBRL data. Or they might do a Dear Issuer letter where the template of a particular XBRL data issue is out, it's public, but only the division and the filer knows who got that letter. Or if we decide that that is not the viable option, then we publish on our website data quality reminders. So we know who those filers are with data quality issues. We cannot call them out, but that kind of reminds everyone to be mindful of data quality. All the structured data is great, but if the quality is not there, it's not as useful.
Absolutely. You had a question.
Yeah, you mentioned that you, sorry about that, started accepting inline in 2019, right? So I'm curious, as of today, what percentage of submissions are inline versus non-inline? Or are they all required to be inline
They're all
now?
required to be inline XBRL. And
Okay.
if they are not, that makes us question, why aren't you using inline XBRL?
Fair enough. That was my question.
No worries.
Thank you very much. There's a question at the back.
Hi, Julie. One type of XBRL disclosure that I look at from the SEC is ratings history files provided by NRSROs. Is that something that your office has looked at previously? It seems like it's implemented in a very different way from corporate disclosure currently.
So we have, I think that was done before I joined the commission. And right now, I think that process is a little different from ours. So since my time with the group, we have not looked into that. But we do talk to them about taxonomies and how things are done in other groups.
Okay, thank you. Is there one more question, or is it time for coffee? I heard coffee, so there you go. Julie, thank you so much for coming to Zurich. We really appreciate your time. Thanks for answering the questions. Well.